Ishmael, the firstborn of Abraham, was born to Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant of Sarah, Abraham's wife. The Lord had promised Abraham abundant offspring, despite his advanced age. However, Sarah, being barren, offered her maidservant Hagar to Abraham, in accordance with the customs of that time, so that he could have an heir. Thus begins the biblical narration of Ishmael. At the time of Ishmael's birth, Abraham was 86 years old. The sacred texts reveal that Abraham loved Ishmael dearly, to the point of asking God to consider him his promised heir. However, when Ishmael was about 13 years old, God reaffirmed his promise to Abraham, who was 99 years old, promising him an offspring from his wife Sarah. Moreover, God commanded that all the males in his house be circumcised as a sign of the covenant. Since Ishmael was circumcised at 13, some Arabian tribes adopted the custom of circumcising their young men at that age. Not long after, Isaac, the biological son of Sarah and Abraham, was born, which generated tensions between Sarah and Hagar. In fact, they had already had disagreements before Ishmael's birth. Scripture indicates that after conceiving, Hagar despised Sarah, which was a serious mistake, since according to the laws of the time, a fertile servant could not defy a sterile wife. If this happened, the special servant chosen to bear the heir could be demoted to the status of a common slave. Therefore, according to the customs of the time, Sarah had the right to afflict Hagar for her contempt. However, Hagar ended up fleeing to the desert for fear of Sarah. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to her and commanded her to return to Abraham's house. In the desert, the angel also indicated that the son in her womb should be named Ishmael. Therefore, the name Ishmael means God hears, because the Lord heard Hagar's affliction, as narrated in Genesis 16:11. However, the conflict between Sarah and Hagar intensified when Isaac was weaned. During Isaac's weaning feast, Ishmael mocked him, which deeply offended Sarah. She demanded that Abraham expel Hagar and her son, as related in Genesis 21. Although Sarah's request contradicted the norms of the time, since according to those regulations, Ishmael was considered the legitimate son of both Abraham and Sarah, having been conceived by her personal servant. In extreme circumstances, a lord's son with a servant could be demoted within the family, but never expelled. All of this caused great pain to Abraham, but God spoke to him again and assured him that he should not worry about Isaac, as he would take care of the slave's son and grant him numerous offspring. Scripture does not offer details about what motivated Sarah's request to expel Ishmael and Hagar, but it seems that beyond Ishmael's specific actions, Sarah perceived him as a threat to the position of her biological son in the family. So, after being comforted by God, Abraham dismissed Hagar and her son with bread and water. However, at a certain point, they ran out of water and thought they were going to die. The Bible relates that Hagar placed Ishmael under a tree and walked away so as not to watch him perish. Although it is common to imagine Ishmael as a small child at this point, it is very likely that he was already a teenager of about 16 years. In Genesis 21, we read that God assisted Hagar and Ishmael and reaffirmed his promise to make Ishmael a prosperous man. Ishmael moved with his mother to the desert of Beersheba, and later to the desert of Paran. Although Isaac became Abraham's sole heir, Ishmael and Abraham's other children with his concubines also received benefits from him, as narrated in Genesis 25. This indicates that both Ishmael, son of Hagar, and the sons of Keturah received material goods from the patriarch. Although disagreements existed between Ishmael, Isaac, Hagar, and Sarah during their youth, the Bible does not mention conflicts between Ishmael and Isaac in adulthood. In fact, they both took care of Abraham's burial in Machpelah. The Bible ends the narration about Ishmael by informing that he became a great hunter, skilled with bow and arrows. Hagar found an Egyptian wife for Ishmael, with whom he had 12 sons and a daughter. Later, according to Genesis 28 and 36, Ishmael's daughter married Esau, Isaac's son. The names of Ishmael's sons are found in Genesis 25, 13-15, and most of these names are mentioned in other parts of the Bible, as influential tribal families of the time. The descendants of Ishmael, generally identified as Ishmaelites in the Bible, organized themselves into 12 tribes living in nomadic camps in the southern desert. Genesis 25:17 mentions that Ishmael died at the age of 137, but his burial place is not specified. The Muslim tradition, however, maintains that he was buried in the Kaaba, in Mecca. In the New Testament, Ishmael is especially mentioned by the Apostle Paul in Galatians 4, where he uses the figure of the son of the slave in an allegory about the opposition of religious legalists who persecuted Gentile believers. Over time, the name Ishmael became relatively common, and therefore other people are also mentioned in the Bible by the name of Ishmael. For example, there was a descendant of Saul and Prince Jonathan named Ishmael, a high official during the reign of Jehoshaphat, and a priest's son in the time of Ezra. Among all the people mentioned, apart from Hagar's son, the best known was the son of Nethaniah, a member of the royal house of David during the Babylonian oppression against the Jews. This Ishmael killed Gedaliah, the governor of Judah appointed by Nebuchadnezzar, as related in 2 Kings 25 and in Jeremiah 40 and 41. To conclude, the story of Ishmael in the Bible highlights some main points. Ishmael was not the son promised by God to Abraham, but God took care of him, chose his name, and destined him for greatness, although outside of the covenant. He was blessed with a great offspring organized into 12 clans, just like the descendants of Isaac. God described Ishmael's character, emphasizing the nomadic life of his descendants and the opposition of his people to the sons of the covenant. Over time, the descendants of Ishmael joined the Midianites, descendants of Abraham through Keturah, so in several biblical passages, the Ishmaelites and the Midianites are basically the same people. Today, the Arab people trace their descent to Abraham, mainly through Ishmael. The story of Ishmael in the Bible goes beyond a simple biography. His contrast with Isaac reveals much about God's work and the outpouring of His grace in the history of redemption. Ishmael was the natural result of the relationship between Abraham and Hagar, while Isaac was the supernatural result that revealed God's great power by allowing a 90-year-old barren woman to conceive. Ishmael represents the autonomous human attempt to achieve God's will. Isaac represents God's grace and supernatural intervention to fulfill His promise. If you enjoyed this presentation, don't forget to share it with your friends and family. We would love to hear your thoughts, so leave your comments in the section below and let us know if you are already familiar with the story of Ishmael. See you next time, and may God bless you.